Saying Grace, a Prayer of Thanksgiving, written by Virginia Kroll, illustrated by Timothy Ladwig. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. Philippians 4:6. People were saying that the coming winter would be long and hard. Mr. Miller claimed he could tell by looking at the woolly bear caterpillar's fuzz. Too much black and not enough orange. Mrs. Oates noticed. Squirrels are gathering nuts early. Mr. Hodge said, Robins flew south ahead of time. We're in for a harsh season. Mama, Grace worried, do you think our neighbors are right about the winter? Harsh. The very words sounded like the hissing wind. Only God knows, Mama answered as she rocked baby Faith. We have firewood stacked and food stored. Stop fretting and say a prayer instead. Now why don't you and Isaiah go down to the creek and ladle me a bucket of water for the stew? Yes, Mama. Grace and her younger brother swished through the fallen leaves and breathed a delicious smell. Grace spun in circles under the still warm sunshine. What a glorious golden day, Isaiah, she shouted, her worries forgotten for the moment. Isaiah paid no attention. He was watching a box turtle munch a leaf. When soaking rains came, going to school was impossible. Unless you build an ark, Papa joked. Mama drilled Grace on her lessons until the puddles vanished. Grace was happy as she once again made her way to school and met up with Hannah along the way. Hannah and Grace were both 8, best friends, and in 3rd level. It was a chilly morning, and Grace shivered as she and Hannah took their seats near the wood stove. Grace was glad for Mama's tutoring. She received a gold star for spelling that very afternoon. On the way home, white fluffy flakes began falling. Hurrah! Yelled Hannah. Here comes winter. Hurrah! Said Grace. Winter frightens me. That's because you're a fretter, Grace, said Hannah, waving goodbye when she reached her house. Grace remembered last winter. 7 people had died from pneumonia, including Granny. In February, Papa went missing, stranded in a blizzard after going to town. While he was gone, Mama birthed Faith way too soon. The baby was tiny and limp like a rag doll, and she whimpered like a kitten. Grace did Mama's chores as best she could. But even with the hard work, flaming hearth, and down-filled quilts, Grace always had been chilled. In March, just as the creamy snowdrop flowers burst bravely through the softening soil, Papa returned, and Faith had cooed and wailed like a healthy baby. Mama praised God for his mercy. No, Grace did not want another winter like last year's. Grace went to her room and opened the Bible to Psalms, as her father taught her to do. The passage under her finger said that God takes good care of the birds, even though they do not reap and sow, and that he takes even better care of his children. Please send us a gentle winter, Grace prayed. Grace's prayer was answered. She waited for blizzards, but any snow that fell melted just as quickly. Grace recalled Mama's words, only God knows. Springtime passed, and by summer, Faith was running and laughing. Isaiah's limbs outgrew his shirt sleeves and pants. Mama kept busy sewing, and Grace kept busy in the garden. She prayed for the right mix of rain and sun to grow the crops. When harvest time came, everyone helped with the picking, plucking, heaving, hauling, peeling, cooking, canning, and storing. Mrs. Oates' son Benjamin brought back a wife named Abigail, who told about a custom that had started in her settlement. Once a year, everyone came together for miles around to share a harvest feast. Grace's neighbors liked that idea and set a date for their own fall celebration. Grace and Hannah said, "We'll bake pies." For several days, they mashed pumpkin flesh, boiled rhubarb stalks, and rolled dough. They let Isaiah sprinkle apple slices with sugar and cinnamon, and giggled when he announced, "I'm the official taster." Papa and Mr. Lambert made long wooden tables and benches. Mama and the other women stuffed pheasants and turkeys that the men and boys had hunted. The older girls minded the little ones while their parents worked. When Grace and Hannah went to get water, Grace pointed to a squirrel holding a nut in its front paws. "It looks like it's praying, doesn't it?" she said. As the girls scooped the sparkling water, Grace noticed 4 gulls circling. "It looks like they're singing praises to God," said Grace. On the day of the fall feast, there were green salads, orange yams wrapped in corn husks, ears of golden corn steaming in iron kettles, roasted meats, and fruity pies. When everyone was seated, Papa said, "Let the feast begin!" Spoons and platters clinked, and there was a hum of happy voices. Grace remembered the squirrel and the gulls. "Wait!" she shouted. Everyone stopped and stared. "Shouldn't we first say thank you to God and ask a blessing?" "What an excellent idea, Grace," said Mr. Miller. "Why don't you say the prayer?" Grace's mind raced. What would she say? What was that spelling word that meant great generosity and giving? She squeezed her eyes shut, and it came to her. Bounty! That was it! As steamy aromas wafted up from the food, Grace gulped and raised her face to the sky. "Dear God in heaven," she said, "we thank you for your bounty. Please bless us and all our food. Amen." "Amen," the gathering echoed. Noise began anew as plates and spirits overflowed. Later, with the full bellies and thankful hearts, the adults talked while their children played chase and invented new games. The next morning, when Grace's family sat down to breakfast, Isaiah looked at his sister and said, "Say it, Grace." Little Faith copied him. "Say grace." From that day forward, at every meal, the family took turns saying grace. Mama often quoted verses from the Bible. Papa talked to God as if he were an old friend, seated right there with them. Isaiah sang church songs, and Faith babbled away. Grace wrote several new prayer poems of her own. Sometimes she used words like bounty and giving, but she never, ever forgot the thanks.
The end.